Finally, let's talk about Spider-Noir. So when this series was first announced, I really didn't know what to expect. I knew Nicolas Cage was going to be in it. I knew he voiced the character in Into the Spider-Verse or Across the Spider-Verse. And at first, I thought this was going to be animation, but then it was live action. And so again, I didn't know what to expect. So coming into this, I knew nothing. So story-wise, the narrative is very interesting. It's set in the 1930s. It's near the end of the Prohibition era, that era of history where it was illegal to buy, sell, or drink alcohol. Not that that stopped anybody from doing that anyway. So we actually see a much older Spider-Man character here. In this universe, they call it the Spider, and the Spider is Ben Reilly. And so Ben Reilly had lost his love of his life, Ruby, and he basically gave up being the Spider and no longer is a hero anymore, and deciding he's going to be a cynical private investigator. He does have some friends, his secretary Janet and his journalist buddy Robbie Robertson. And so the real story starts when someone makes an attempt to assassinate a notorious crime boss, Silvermane, this Irish crime boss. And so Ben is hired to figure out who was the guy who tried to kill Silvermane and who was the guy who hired that guy to kill Silvermane. And Silvermane also realizes he has a rat in his crime syndicate. And so he also asks Ben to investigate. And so the show really does well in weaving through those subplots. And so, for example, Robbie, he's a dedicated journalist. He's trying to get his job back at the Bugle. He built his career by covering the Spider. We also have, for example, a singer in Silvermane's establishment, Cat Hardy, and she wants Ben to figure out why Flint Marko is missing. And so, what's even more fascinating is how the show handles all the villains in this particular series. And so you have Megawatt, Sandman, Tombstone, and they're not really villains per se. They're just to me misunderstood characters. Minus Megawatt, he's legit insane. But what was fascinating about all these characters is that all these characters were World War One veterans, and they were captured and subjugated to German experiments. Military experiments, and they ended up developing mutations. Very similar to how Ben got his powers, he ends up being bitten by a person who was subjugated to a spider experiment. So he wasn't bitten by a spider, but he was bitten by a man spider, as I would say it. And so Silvermane also makes an attempt to weaponize these tragic villains to seize control of New York City from the current mayor, and he does this by kind of funding the opposition to the mayor. And so pacing wise, it's pretty much flawless. Nothing feels rushed or underdeveloped. Every single character kind of gets its own room to breathe and forcing you to sympathize with their plight. Probably the only exception is Cat Hardy. I mean, if you know anything about the Black Cat character, she really is a backstabber and a liar. Good person, but still a liar, a backstabber sometimes. And so that's what you are going to get from the story. Now, when you look at the cinematography, you're not going to get some Marvel movie spider type movement. This is a retired Spider-Man. It's going to look a little clunky the way he gets hit. You know, it's not a youthful Spider-Man. This is an older Spider-Man who has quit being Spider-Man. But I will say there is some cool moments in this show. The way Ben utilizes the architecture of New York City, hopping from a lamppost to the wall, from the cars, utilizing the 1930s cars in this particular show. And the real triumph, I think, is in the immersion experience. I think Amazon did a great job of getting you to feel like you are physically walking the streets of the 1930s. I think Amazon also did an amazing job giving you the option to watch this show either in color or in black and white. And so I chose to watch it in black and white. I was seeing some clips in color just to compare. And to me, black and white is the definitive experience. You feel like you're watching a noir detective story. You are feeling that it's the 1930s, and it doesn't really take you aback all too much. It feels authentic and genuine, but with a modern look. And so younger audiences might want to choose the color because, color is safe. But watching in black and white was a really great experience, and you really felt like you're watching in that time period. Very similar to WandaVision. If you ever watched that show, and you start off with the early decade show and you watch it in black and white, and then it progressively gets to color. And so I would say the real theme of this show, season one, is how do you handle loss? How do you handle bitter regret? And Ben is really consumed by the guilt of failing to save Ruby. He feels like if he never became the Spider, Ruby would have never died. And so this show hits an emotional peak, a low point where Ben actually crashes out in a bar. He's sitting in a bar. He's listening to the people in the bar talk trash about the Spider. And he sort of just like in a drunken state, yells at them. He's like, "Hey, have you ever considered that the Spider's human too?" And they just laugh at him. And so in a very comical way, Ben walks out of the bar and then comes back in as the Spider, and then just basically beats up everybody in the bar. And it's very comical because he's crashing out. It's funny. It's cool to see Spider-Man just crash out at normal people who are just really like do not appreciate him. But it does highlight his low point. He's offered a literal antidote, and he has the antidote in the bar to strip away his powers and become normal again. But of course, every Spider-Man story is, with great power comes great responsibility. Silvermane is taking over the city. And so Ben ultimately remembers, with the help from Janet and the help from Robbie in particular, that like, hey, like you didn't become the Spider because of the thrill or out of obligation. You became the Spider because you genuinely care about people. And that's what Ben did when he was fighting in World War One. He was fighting to free the prisoners from the German military experiments, and he genuinely does care about people. So do I have any criticisms about this show? And I really don't. I mean, if you're looking for little mistakes, you might notice little continuity errors, maybe how Ben switches from his sharp dress shoes as a PI into his boots or the Spider, or how random the webbing logic is in the show. But to be honest, those details are so minor. And in a weird way, those little quirky minor errors makes it feel more authentic to a 1930s piece of cinema and television. And so for me, the final verdict of this show is it's a 10 out of 10. I think Nicolas Cage is a great choice for Ben Reilly as Spider-Noir. It seems like Cage really connected with this character from a personal level. I think the supporting cast from Robbie, Janet, Cat Hardy, Silvermane, and all the other villains. I was really impressed also as a history buff how historically accurate the writers kept this world. They weren't afraid to talk about or address or reference racial segregation or the Jim Crow era or racial segregation in the military, the realities of prohibition. I think that is something quite a lot of people tend to avoid talking about, but it is a piece of history. It was real, and I'm glad that they weren't afraid to address it. So for me, Spider-Noir, 10 out of 10. Hey, if you liked that video, hit the like button or leave a comment below. Really helps with the channel.